A modern jacuzzi. That's sexy, baby. Yeehaw!
I'm laughing because I feel like you need a little red cap and, I don't know, you're like Bill Murray right now. Putting a hodgepodge outfit together.
At least you're not the one going out.
I'm with you.
Are you? Because you're not in here.
I mean, I'm with you emotionally.
I have no experience cleaning a hull. I have very little experience snorkeling. I have zero experience wearing a wetsuit while snorkeling. And if I'm being honest, the murky water totally freaks me out. So this should go totally great. The bottom of the boat looked very much like I was farming a buffet of sea salad, algae, leafy green stuff, barnacles, worms, and other unidentified sea cabbage. The biggest problem I wasn't prepared for was the buoyancy of the wetsuit. So the water's slapping about, the boat is actually moving in the water, so it's really hard to keep yourself in a position long enough to scrape off the sea gunk. So the paddleboard is there to help me kind of stabilize myself. I had a crazy hard time diving deep to clean the deeper parts of the boat because I didn't realize I'd need a weight belt to offset how buoyant the wetsuit is. More on that later. When I'd finished, I was covered in these tiny inchworms all over my wetsuit. It was super gross. Disgusting. And I hope my wedding ring doesn't fall out of the dinghy.
Oh, my sunglasses!
Oh, did they sink?
Oh, yeah, they're gone.
They're gone.
What's up, sailboat people? Welcome back to another episode of Offshore Spree, where I try to restore some life into this 1970 Cheoy Lee 36-foot sloop so we can go sailing, we can enjoy coastal cruising, we can sail to Catalina, we can go to the Channel Islands, we can do all those fun things that you see people doing on sailboats. This is the week we finally take the boat off the mooring ball and head to the boatyard so we can get a good look at the bottom of the boat. For us to reach this place, we've put in a new ignition switch, put in a new hatch to the engine compartment, we've cleaned out the bilge, we have cleaned and serviced the ray core, we've replaced a bunch of the diesel, we've had a mechanic come out and do a once-over on the engine, we've done a test motor around the marina so we feel confident we can actually get the boat off the mooring ball, we've closed up a hole in the roof where the chimney used to go through, we've installed a new bilge pump, we've had our alternator rebuilt, we've serviced the winches, we've inspected our sails. There's only 2 tasks left on my to-do list before we go to the boatyard. The first is we're going to install a temporary fuel tank so that I know we're not pulling any of the potential gunk that's in the old diesel tanks. I'm working under the assumption that nobody has serviced these tanks in many, many years. There's likely sludge and gunk in the bottom of the tanks. And what I don't want to happen is I don't want to leave the safety of the marina, get out there in the middle of the port, and then suck in all that gunk into the engine and kill the engine. That would be bad. That would be a problem. I don't want that to happen. So we're going to install a 3-gallon temporary fuel tank that I'll fill up with clean diesel that I've purchased recently. So we'll have peace of mind knowing that our engine is sipping on clean diesel as we travel the 7 miles from our mooring ball to the boatyard. Another day, another trip to the marina. In today's episode of Guy Who Does Not Know Squat About Boats, I'm trying to finish the installation of a temporary diesel tank. At the recommendation of our diesel mechanic, he recommended that we just install a, kind of a jerry can and run a fuel line from the jerry can to the Raycor filter, and that way we can ensure that we have clean diesel going into the engine. And then at some point, in the future, I can pull the tanks out and try to give them a proper cleaning and reconnect everything. Yesterday, I actually got as far as cutting the fuel line. I could not get the fuel line to come off the Raycor, so I figure I would just splice into it. So today I will be trying to undo my mess. First thing, I have to patch in the fuel line from the temporary tank. That is a 3/8 line, but I have to splice it into a 1/4 line. So I got these splines that I'm gonna use to connect the fuel line that goes into the Raycor to the fuel line that comes from the external. Here is, I'm gonna splice this into the fuel line. You wanna come look over here what I'm working on?
No, I'm videotaping myself.
Oh, finish it yourself. Shoving this into.
What is it?
This is a hose barb.
What? So what does it do?
it will connect this piece of hose, which has a 3/8 diameter. You can see right there, it says 3/8. And it will connect it to another piece of fuel line, which is 1/4 diameter.
Does it have to go through that piece of wood?
No, I'm using this piece of wood to
push that thing.
try to jam it in there.
Oh, okay. Push it real good.
There we go. Okay. All right, so that one's all the way on. I've noticed that I breathe really hard when I'm working on stuff. It's weird. Heavy duty breather.
Just turn around and say hi.
No. Come on. Son of a gun. When all else fails, brute force.
That's what he said.
I don't know who built this engine compartment, but I want to have words with them.
They don't necessarily walk this earth anymore.
Maybe. Even better, I can have words with them right now. I invoke the spirit of the Cheoy Lee architect. All right, you see that?
Sweet.
My legs are shaking.
Port of Los Angeles.
All right, let's see if this will start or not. I've got my primer pump. I've primed it up. So we'll see if this will even turn over. Fingers crossed, in my head it makes sense. Should work. I think it works. Okay, now that we have the temporary fuel tank in, that feels good. Glad that project is done. One last thing we want to tackle. It occurred to me that I should probably check the standing rigging. So I bought a loose tension gauge and got to work. So I went stay by stay or cable by cable and checked the tension of each. Unsurprisingly, each turnbuckle is pretty tight. Those turnbuckles are really just seized onto the threads, and it took a lot of manpower to actually get those to turn and to tighten them up. So that tells me, something important, which is, the standing rigging probably needs to be replaced from deck to top of the mast. Like, I don't see any way around that, but that's not a project for right now. I just don't have the budget for it. It is what it is. And I know there's a bit of risk there in the back of my head, but can't do anything about it now. So we're just gonna use the boat as it is. We got up super early and headed down to the marina on the day that we were going to actually leave the mooring ball and go to the haul out. The water was glassy and calm, which is exactly what we'd hoped for. Once we got on board, the engine actually started up without much coaxing. Jillian went up front and she cast off the mooring lines, and just like that, we were free. This might not seem like a big deal to you sailors out there, but for us, venturing out into the harbor in an old boat with an untested old engine, steering with a tiller for the first time across a crowded shipping harbor, we were both super nervous. I don't think I pushed the engine over 1200 revs the whole time, so basically we just plodded along at maybe 2.5, 3 knots. I was afraid to push the engine at all. I just wanted to be conservative and just crawl across the harbor and get to the haul out with no issues. And you know what? Our old Perkins got us there without any drama. And that was awesome, because the last mile or so getting to the haul out was lined with tankers on either side. There really is no room to have a mishap in that particular shipping corridor. Looks like we're gonna make it. We didn't have to call Boat US. We didn't have to get a tow. We felt pretty proud about getting our old boat off the mooring ball and making it all the way to the haul out with no issues. That was just an awesome, awesome feeling. The
The fine folks over at Cabrillo Boat Shop treated us really well. We got tied up really fast, and unfortunately though, their crane operator who was gonna haul the boat out wasn't there in that moment, so we had to lead the boat and I had to go to work, Jillian had to go to work, so I wasn't able to get any footage of the boat actually being hauled out in that moment. However, funny story, later that afternoon, I get a call from the boat shop. I'm now at work, and I get a call. Hey, just want to let you know everything went well. The boat is out of the water. It's on the hard. Everything's golden. But who was the diver who did your last hull cleaning? And I could tell by her tone that she was one half pissed on my behalf, and the other half was like just incredulous. And I was like, why do you ask? And she goes, because the bottom half of your boat is just covered in marine growth, but the top half is totally clean. Somebody's ripping you off. Somebody's telling you they're cleaning your boat, but they're not really cleaning your boat. And I was too embarrassed to actually admit that it was me. So I just said, oh, well, yeah, thank you so much for letting me know. I'll make sure I let that diver know that his work is subpar. I'm a crappy diver so far.
There she is, she's out.
Okay, so a day goes by. Now we are ready to figure out what it is we're gonna actually have the boat shop do. So the first thing that we know we have to have done is we're gonna sand down the bottom of the boat, fill in a couple of problem areas, and have the bottom of the boat repainted with anti-fouling paint. Basically, it's a kind of paint that when barnacles and such try to adhere onto the boat, they actually kind of just fall off. The paint kind of dissolves in a way that makes it really difficult for marine life to hold onto the bottom of your boat. It turns out our dripless needs to be replaced on the prop shaft. We're gonna have the rudder repacked. As long as it's out of the water, we might as well get that done. Turns out we need a new propeller. I had hoped that maybe we could take it off, send it to a prop shop, and have them add some material to it, weld it up, and then reshape it and maybe save it. But in the end, it turns out we couldn't save it and we needed a new prop, so we had to shell out for that. We also put in a new cutlass bearing in addition to the prop. So basically, prop, cutlass bearing, and repacking the rudder, we just tackled all three of those at once. We needed to replace the anodes on the bottom of the boat. Gotta have zincs. This boat has a bolt-on keel, so we got those bolts retorqued. We also had them caulk the seam of the keel. The hope is that it helps keep any water from creeping in through that seam and doing any damage at the joint between the keel and the hull of the boat. We knew going into this that there was the potential to really see like the price tag skyrocket for us. For us, that came in the form of replacing through hulls. Our through hulls were just in horrible shape, and there is a couple of them in the engine compartment that I tried to get my arms in there and I just couldn't reach. That was one of those situations where I was like, you know what, take my money. I don't want to deal with this. This is the perfect time to hire somebody else to do this work because this is beyond me. I don't think I can get it done. All in all, we had 8 through hulls replaced on the boat. That was a pretty penny. Not because the materials were that expensive, the materials are the materials, but the labor on that was pretty high. All in all, I was really happy with the level of transparency that I had with the boat shop and you know, their assessment of the boat. They were super willing to have a conversation around the cost of each recommendation they had made for things that we should replace. A number of the things we said, no, we're not doing right now. You know, let's make sure there's no water coming into the boat. Let's deal with some of the fundamentals of the boat. When I bought the boat, I called a buddy of mine up in San Francisco who is a pretty accomplished sailor, and I was super proud of myself, and I told him, hey man, I bought a 1970 boat for $1,600, man. How cool is that? That's so exciting. And he laughed and he was supportive, but he did say, and this has stuck with me, there's nothing more expensive than a cheap boat. And that is proving to be true. I don't say that in a negative way, but I do feel like it needs to be said. There's virtually nothing in this boat that could not be replaced with something more modern. So it's a question about balancing your budget against reality. In our case, because we bought the boat at $1,600, and because this boat is worth probably $20,000 to $35,000 if it was in much better shape, I do feel like there's quite a bit of room there in the middle where we can spend money, we can invest money in the boat, and we don't feel like we're just throwing the money away. But ultimately, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, like, what's your tolerance? How much do you want to spend? What are you hoping to do with the boat? What is your goal? So you have to weigh your options. We want to learn to sail. We are still novice sailors, so I wanted a sloop, something really easy to handle. So check that mark. I wanted a heavy displacement full keel boat. I get seasick, so I wanted a boat that would perform more gently in the Pacific. We're in Southern California. We have sporty waters a lot of the time. So for me, I wanted a heavy boat. I wanted a boat that wasn't going to be all over the place in seas. So check that mark. And I wanted a boat that, you know, if we did make a mistake, if we did, you know, rub the edge of the dock as we dock it. If I made a mistake by, for example, anchoring incorrectly and stressing the windlass and causing a big problem, I wanted a boat that I didn't have to worry about screwing up. I didn't want to go out and buy a brand new boat for $100,000 and then freak out if I put a scratch in the paint, or freak out if like I came in a little hard on the dock and slammed it a bit. I wanted just a good solid boat that I could learn on and feel comfortable about, and know that if I made a catastrophic mistake, which, you know, fingers crossed I'm not gonna do that, but if I did, it wouldn't be as though I threw away my retirement. It wouldn't be as though I wrote a check that I shouldn't have, you know? Like, I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, how much money should we spend? For us, we feel pretty comfortable, like between the $10,000 to $20,000 mark invested in this boat over time, not at once. That seems like a reasonable amount of money to spend to keep the boat seaworthy and safe and enjoyable. The estimate for us at this marina for all the work I listed is around $13,000. We went in hoping we'd be closer to the $7,000 or $8,000 mark, but it was those through holes that really put us over the edge. The labor around those was actually quite high. A lot of them were really hard to reach places, so I kind of knew that was gonna bite me in the butt. At the end of the day, it needed to be done. We needed the peace of mind knowing it was done, and we bit the bullet and said yes. Should also be said, we're in Southern California. Boat shops, you know, boat yards generally aren't as affordable as other places in the country. We've seen some quotes out of Florida and New England that seem quite a bit less, maybe because it's more of a sailing culture in those states, and so there's more amenities more readily available. I also found it odd that there weren't that many places we could haul out in Southern California, at least in the greater Los Angeles area, I should say, which is where we're at. There's only a handful of players, which you know, I thought was a little sus, because then you're basically beholden to what pricing is available. I know some folks will sail south to Mexico for the season, which we might do in the future. That might be a way to save some money, but it also poses its own challenges too. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But we're happy to be at the boat shop, and we're happy to see some progress happening on the boat. We hope you'll come back next week. We'll take possession of the boat and we'll head back to the marina. And more importantly, we get ready for our first sail. So come back and hang out with us. Hit like, hit subscribe. It's free for you, and it's super meaningful for me as I try to build this channel and reach other sailboat enthusiasts around the world. If you have a question for me, leave it down in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer each one of you. So make sure to come back next time when we go sailing. Wish us luck.